Hi, in this tutorial we will continue with the study of PLSQL. This is the second part of the tutorial about PLSQL. Now, um, again in the PowerPoint there are other statements that just may look different from what we have in common practice in other programming languages. So this is just illustrating that for loop, how can we use that in here in PLSQL, and then I think you can study that. So in the example that we had before, didn't include an exception section. So again, the PLSQL block, remember it has three sections: declaration, the execution, and the exception. And the only one that is required is the execution. So in this section is what to do when we got an error, and then we have a specific type of statement that is the when statement, that when exception, the name, then execute the following. It is like a kind of an if statement. And there are some predefined exceptions that will be common in SQL, like okay, the most common is probably not data found. I mean, we're searching for something, and we're asking for the user, let's say for the ID of a student, and then there is a typo or the ID is wrong, and then we don't find the student, then we'll have an error. And there may be other type of errors that have been illustrated here, and then what to do in that case. So most cases we will just display a message, or it depends of what the error is. So there are the predefined exceptions there and some local codes there. And there may be other, so there are some system defined, and there may be others that may be specific to your database system or your application that you will define, like for example, um, they may be that the company cannot give raises greater than 5%. So if somebody tries to update that, then we could uh, define that as an exception, an error, or for example, GPA cannot be negative. So maybe we can do the same here. We can also define that in the create table as a general constraint, right? So there will be things that we have to decide if we do both, or we have that if we make. The idea here is that we can take more actions if we define a PLSQL block. So here is an example talking about the GPA. So here we have a declaration. We had an invalid GPA. Look at this type exception. So this is the execution section, and then here the GPA is less than 0 or uh, greater than 4. Then we will raise invalid GPA, and then that will take me to deception, and then in deception, when that happens, then display that message. And that's the idea of what to do with an exception. So I think it's a good practice, and some of the applications that we will be working for the class, we don't really need exceptions. However, it's a good idea to understand them. Now, for the blocks, we just had in the previous tutorial an example of what we will call an anonymous block. So we have basically the three types of blocks: anonymous, procedures, and functions. So the anonymous block is basically that. It's just a piece of code that we have executed a program, and then it doesn't have a name. The difference with procedures and function is that we can assign a name, and we can actually reuse that code. And the difference between a procedure and a function is the procedures will return some data. You see, this is very similar. When you define the procedure, you give a name, and a function you also give a name. You got a parameters, and then in the procedure you have the is, and between the is and the begin is the declaration of the local variables that we'll be using in the procedure. And we got the same here. There is an is, the declaration, and the begin. So the only difference is that we have the definition also of a return data type, because functions will have a return statement while procedures don't. So let's see example. So we got three types of blocks. We already saw this. This is an example of an anonymous block. So that's I have a name, we execute it, and it's just a program. Now let's see what happened with the procedure. So the procedure, this is the format. So we got the procedure, we give a name, we have parameters, we got the local declarations, and then we got the other three sections that we have. Now, the parameter, this is something that is also very interesting, can be in, out, or can be both. That means can be, we can pass the just the value of the parameters, or we can also have the user to provide some output. So that will be useful in the sense that we can have multiple answers when we execute that, because we can have, I don't know, several variable parameters that can be out, and then they can be assigned by being executed in when we execute the procedure of the function. So here, this is an example of a program that uses a procedure. So here is the, look at that, now we're including the set server output on again, so we will able to have the DBMS output to see, so we can see on the screen when there is an output there. So here we already know about the declaration section. So on the declaration section, I'm declaring these variables. But look at that, we also have the definition of a procedure. So the procedure, this is the customer, and then for that, we get in as a parameters customer ID, customer name, customer city, and look at the what we got, in, out, out. That means we will provide the ID, we're not providing anything here. So we were expecting that once we execute the procedure, we will get back the name and the city from that procedure, and then the status too. So there will be those three. So now the is will give me local variables that I will need there. So it seems that I don't need anything. Then I begin with the execution of the procedure. So the procedure is an SQL statement in which I'm reading I'm getting the name and the city given the customer ID. So remember that this was given by the user, the customer ID. So once I get the customer ID, then I get the city, and then I'm getting that in those two variables, cost name and cost city, which also those must be my uh, variables that I will return. Now here is status true, so this is just to say that maybe a flag to everything was successful. Then if the exception it wasn't found, the customer, I mean, they gave me an ID that is not valid, that we got this status. Now this is the beginning of the main program. So this will be the end of my procedure, and then here I'm assigning this to this variable, then I'm calling this procedure here. So what I'm asking is doing customer, this is the customer ID, so I'm passing that here, and then I should be able, once this is executed, to get the name and the city and the status. So the status will be the true, false. True if the customer was found. If that's the case, then we display the data. Okay, else we say customer not found. And that will be the end of that program, that example. So now this is another example that uses a function. And now what we expect to see different is that we will have a return statement. So again, this is we're adding this, which is not actually part of the PLSQL, but we said it's a good practice to have it there because we need that for the DBMS output. So here is we declare, we got here these two variables. This is the function number of customers, and we just given one parameter, and the parameter is an int, and we return a number. And we have a local variable between the is and the begin, that are my local variables for the function. It says number of customers. So we had a select count stir, so we're counting from customers in a given city, and this is my into statement, into clause that gets the information from there, and I just return the number. So you see that we could have done that with the procedure and put an out variable too, right? So this is similar. So here, this is the beginning of my main program. So I'm assigning Dallas here, and then this is the way that I will get the information, and then I'm executing the function. But remember, this function will return something, which in this case is a number, and then I display the number of customers in that city. And in this example, we did not have the um, exception. Okay, so now those functions and procedures were useful. However, it looks, I think, even more useful to have the idea of stored procedure and stored functions. Now, in the stored procedures and the stored functions, we see that they can be pieces of independent code that we can store in compiled format. So yes, so just look that here. Um, let's see the difference. So in the previous example, we have that code, I mean that function and procedure hosted in a program. So now here, let's see this example. So we can create this this in a script in an SQL file, and so here we got the create or replace procedure, so the customer name, and then here again we're providing the customer ID, the ID in, and the so we just given the customer ID, and then we want to get the name. So in this procedure we got a local variable which will get the name, and then look what just basically executing an SQL statement that given the ID I want to see what is the name, and then this will display on this in the screen the customer of the name. So this procedure I just type, I don't know, customer 2517, call the procedure, and then I get the name. So how is that we execute it? So the good practice is to store that in a file. We execute the file. So once we get that, it will uh, execute it and compile it, and then we have it now in memory. And then once it's there, once we have that there, and anytime we can execute the procedure, like doing that, execute the name of the procedure. We will see an example of that in another tutorial that we need to do in your Oracle account. Okay, so now let's end this tutorial with the idea of package. So now we already know that we have stored procedures and stored functions. So after a while, we may end with several stored functions and stored procedures, and they may be related, so kind of like creating your own library. So we have what we call a package, which is we grouped some type of related objects, which in our case we just know about functions, but there may be other type of objects that we can define in Oracle, and we're not discussing that now. But in our case, we were basically grouping procedures and functions. And then for that definition, we're going to have a package specification and the package body. And then the specification provides the interface to the users of the package, which means the specification, it says, okay, this is the grouping of these functions and these procedures, but it doesn't say what is the definition, while the body contains the actual code. So those are the two things. So here, this is an example. Banking application. So what it says here in this package, we're going to have a function check balance, we're going to have a procedure which is a deposit, and we're going to have another procedure which is the withdrawal. So again, the specification is just the look, this is the grouping, I'm grouping one function and two procedures. So checking balance, we provided the customer ID, and we expect to get as a return the balance. The deposit, we will provide the customer ID, and we will provide an amount, and there is nothing in return, so that should change the balance, right? And then in the procedure, we provided the ID and the amount, and again, it should change the balance because we're doing a withdrawal. Let's see what the body says. So um, in in the body, we specify what is the actual need to be executed in the function. So for example, in the package body banking, so the check balance, again, we define that in the specification. This is what we have, but what is it that wasn't defined there? This. So it says, okay, we select balance from table accounts, get the balance into this variable where the account is this, and then just return the balance. So it's basically just executing an SQL statement which we are just reading what is the balance in this account. Okay, now the procedure deposit, remember that we're gonna customer ID and the amount, right? So now check, is the amount negative? Shouldn't be a negative amount to make a deposit. If it is, then there must be a mistake. Else we could change. What we need to do is change the accounts and we will update table accounts. We set the balance, whatever is the balance, uh, plus the amount. Now, okay, so look that here we just adding whatever is the balance. We don't even check the balance and just put the amount, and then that's it. That's the end of the deposit. Now, the procedure withdrawal should be kind of similar to the deposit, but in this case should be a negative. So here we get the uh, here we get the account number, the amount. Now, in the deposit, we were checking if the amount to be deposited was positive, and then it wasn't, that we just updated. So in this case, we will check the balance, and then for that, look at how this uh, illustrates that now this procedure is using another function within the package. So it's calling in check balance, which is the function in this package, and then it's checking for the getting the account number, so we get the balance, and then if the amount is greater, that whatever is the balance, that should be disallowed, right? So it shouldn't be sufficient funds, otherwise there is not a problem, and then we just change the balance. Now, just a quick comment. If we take away this statement, that means every account in the table, the balance will be deducted, right? So this where clause was very important. And that will be the end of that package. We just need to see the use of how we execute this, and I will stop this tutorial because that's already too long. So here, this is something that we need to check between being public and private, and the construct within the package or can be accessed by other of them. So here is how that we use the package. So remember, we had those in files. So we start them like this. So the specification, then the body, and then if we need to execute, this would be the example of the executing. So for example, here execute banking deposit. So this is the account number, this is the deposit, and that's it. This is the accounting, the withdrawal, and this is the number and the amount to be withdrawn. So that's very simple for the procedures. However, for the function, if we want to execute it, we need to define a variable first, because remember that the difference is that a function returns a value. So I need this to get the balance. So here I'm defining variable val, and then when I execute, which is the difference. So look at that here, I just need to execute, give the name of the procedure and the parameters. So in this case, when I execute it, then I say here colon, here is like this is wherever is, because val actually is like a pointer. So this is wherever is that location in memory for val. Make an assignment of what this returns. And then if I want to see the value of val, then I just say print the value of val. And that will be the way that we can do that. Okay, that will be all in this tutorial.